Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Free Soda. This episode is named The Chicken Shack.
Okay, no. Let me take it from here. So today's episode, which could be one of our final episodes of this season, is called The Chicken Shack, where we're going to be talking about gaming, esports, and all that good stuff. And to contribute to making the discussion more relevant for us, we're going to be playing the game Apex Legends, which is an up-and-coming battle royale game that we're going to build off of and talk off of while we actually record the podcast. So we hope everyone's excited. It's our first time playing the game, but we hope to get one win while we record for our audience.
The first time playing this game.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, so let's kick it off. So our team is about to ready up. What Apex Legends is it's a battle royale game. If you don't know what a battle royale game is, they are a very popular genre of video games, and for Gen Z kids especially, where basically you send a giant lobby of players, about 100, into a single map world, and last team or person standing wins. And how Apex Legends differentiates it, how Apex Legends is different from most battle royale games is that the characters you choose to play as actually have specific abilities, similar to the very notorious first-person shooter Overwatch, which is also highly competitive. So yeah, that's what we're playing right now. But we're going to open this discussion by talking about esports as a whole. Now, Harold and Matthew, my two co-hosts, do you think that esports are valid a valid activity, let's call it, to be considered as a sport? Do you think college should recruit for esports? Do you think people should be able to get paid and play in series for esports just as if it were a game like football or baseball?
I think yes.
I definitely think that it's one way to look at it is that it's certainly as entertaining.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
if games are your thing, or specifically one kind of game, or one game more specifically, I suppose, is your passion. I can understand why you would want to see professionals play it in the same way that if you're into baseball or soccer or whatever, you want to see professionals. You want to go out and see professionals play those sports.
Mhm.
Yeah, I actually think it's especially important right now during this sort of coronavirus quarantine time. Actually, there was recently a Formula One race that was
Mhm.
broadcast live, um, and it was with live commentators and so on. But and the graphics were really good. But the race was entirely virtual, and so every racer was at home in their own house.
Mhm.
But you could still watch the race online, and it looked almost exactly like a real Formula One race.
Interesting.
So
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And
that's my 2 cents.
and also what Fortnite did, I think maybe 3 weeks back is they actually had a live Travis Scott concert in game. So
Mhm.
like people would drop into Fortnite and in the sky, Travis Scott would be performing sets live, which is pretty wild. And I think also really appropriate for quarantine. And I know they made a massive amount of revenue off that. So it's also very profitable.
Hmm.
But do you guys think that the skill curve is enough to like warrant these like $1 million series and competitions? Because I know that with sports, there's often a juxtaposed with skill is like a great amount of physicality and actual physical training.
Yeah, I was about to say. I think the initial adversity I might have or what might have to like being paid for esports rather than actual sports is like you're not getting the gruel and sweat you might have if you're like out on a field trying to tackle a full grown
Mhm.
man. But I think Harold brings an excellent point that like most of the reason you're getting paid is because you get paid for something because it's profitable, and in this case, it's because people want to watch these sports, and so if you are even if you're not like sweating and running around trying to do something that's physically difficult, it's still taxing and requires effort for sure to play video games. And if it's entertaining, then that's a source of profit, and therefore it makes sense to get paid for your efforts. So
Agree. And also, I think that just to compensate a little bit for like the physicality and real sports, real sports isn't the right way to describe it, but full-fledged field sports, let's say, is
sure.
like I think there's a higher skill ceiling for video games. I feel like if you like put 1,000 hours into a game, you're gonna still have room to improve, which is kind of ridiculous.
That
Yeah,
interesting.
well, I mean,
I mean, like
I,
if you watch people
yeah.
play professionally or play against people that play professionally, they like exist on a whole nother realm than you.
That's
Like,
true. I
even
mean,
Yeah.
I think it's very similar with quote unquote real
Yeah,
sports
true, I
or
imagine.
physical sports or whatever. But
I mean, yeah, for sports you can develop your not only your skills but also your like you physically get stronger and change.
Mhm.
But
We
I
also,
mean,
I want everyone to know that we placed 14th out of 20 for our first round playing this game, which is not bad, not bad.
it's not
28
great
damage.
either, but we're doing our best.
We're doing our
You know,
best.
I also want to bring up that for people that do play professional video games, they had actually a lot of training does go into like
Hmm.
their routine,
Uh-huh.
and you know, in fact, I think you might even be able to compare the amount of time that is sunk in by players, and maybe they don't have the same sort of physical component, but I think that I definitely think that there are some pro video game players who put in as much effort
Yeah.
and time and commitment as you know rugby players or
Well, it's certainly more of a mental strain because obviously you're not doing as much physical exertion, which makes it more of like a mental thing, but also just that like, you know, exercise for those football players or whatever sports you're playing, you're getting the added benefit of that exercise is good for your brain. Whereas you need to stay healthy if you're constantly sitting in a chair all day, staring at a blue screen, that's taxing on your eyes and your physical health. So so it's just, a lot of people are like, they get exhausted or worn out from trying to stare at a computer screen all day. So it's more of a mental attribute. So it's difficult in a different way.
Yeah. It
so
also
do you think
creates a nice. Oh no, continue, Harold.
I had a question so you
Oh
go
yeah, go for it. Go for it. I'll save mine.
no I was just going to ask we've been comparing video games and professional video games and professional physical sports in-person sports and um, so one thing that I've been thinking is, do you think that there will ever come a time when so video games, esports are definitely picking up popularity. So do you think that there'll ever be a time when they sort of um, overtake
Ooh,
modern
that's a
like
good
current
question.
sports, especially in a post COVID-19 world? Do you think that more and more people will turn to like esports as entertainment rather than going to a baseball game?
I'm really not quite sure. I think that they could definitely get a leg up, but traditional sports have like such a foundation in American culture and global culture for that matter, excuse me. Um, that I think that it would be hard to really beat them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree, and such a legacy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think as like more generations come up with esports and video games like this, I think that they will increase their traction, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's throw another question in there. What I was going to mention is kind of the platform they create for people who maybe have disabilities or can't go out and, play sports like football
Mhm.
or whatever. And I think that that's really important because, like if you watch, for example, Fortnite's World's Best like tourneys, it feels in a way kind of like a Super Bowl or like a massively televised event. Like I forget what stadium they rented out for the Fortnite's World's Best, but it's like on that grand scale. And for kids who really don't have that opportunity with sports, for like that stadium setting, observational skill entertainment, I think that's also really important.
So I
Yeah.
think now as just a quick interjection is that we finished 20th out of 20 there. So
I had damage though.
already.
And
So
make
so
that public.
okay. Um, so I have another question to sort of add into this conversation is that
Mhm.
so you know um, I think that age is a big thing in esports.
Mhm.
I know that's really vague, but for when you think about professional football players or professional soccer players, they're a lot of time they're really young, especially if they come through an academy or whatever. But they're basically ages like 15, I would say, at the youngest, to or 16 to like mid 30s, right? Most professional sports, that's the age for um, that's the peak age.
Right.
But with what we're seeing with esports, particularly something particularly Fortnite and other these really like these games that are sort of taken over, um, you there are a lot of professional gamers who are earning crazy amounts of money, at ages 10, 11, 12,
Mm.
or as early as 10, 11, 12, and they sometimes get recruited by a team, and they go off to live in
FaZe Clan.
houses, and exactly,
Yeah.
and there are these they get recruited. And so what do you think that that's doing for, like, what do you think that specifically is doing sort of culturally? Because I think that there are a lot of kids these days who are like, oh, I like see that as a viable career path.
Yeah,
And,
that's
is
that's
that how do you feel about that?
it's interesting because I just feel like how I grew up. If Here we go, weird hypothetical. My son's like, I want to pursue video gaming as like a long-term career. I would be like off put by that. Like I wouldn't be incredibly supportive of it. It would feel kind of weird to me. Like you want to spend your whole life playing games. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like culturally maybe it will become more acceptable, but right now I still even feel kind of off put by it. Matthew, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because in some ways I think about that off-putness of like it feels like not actual work,
Mm.
or like video games convention traditionally are sort of like something you do as a pastime, or um, but then the thing is, so is football, or some
Oh,
sports.
well, yeah.
So
You're right.
it's like it's tricky. It's like they're both recreational things that can be used as a profession as well. Um, Again, I think that physicality definitely has a lot to do with the stigma surrounding like pursuing video games professionally. I will say that like one thing I noted was Ninja is like one of the most successful streamers of our time right now, and especially because he got really good at Fortnite, which has been one of the most popular games. And he said on an interview, CNN interviewed him or something, um, and he was very, he made sure to mention like, if you got if kids today, I mean, part because a lot of kids are like seeing what Ninja's doing, they're like, wow, I want to do that. I want to play my favorite game for a living. That sounds amazing. But he made sure to advise that like, if you really want to and you think you can put in the time and you think you have a chance, then go for it. But remember that like, it's a risky profession because it's getting more and more popular. And there's certain value, and I might really recommend just going for a more standard job, as it were.
Mm.
So
Quote unquote.
even one of the most successful streamers doesn't necessarily encourage it, because it's difficult to get there. You have to really have um, I guess some natural skill, mostly hours of practice, but then like you don't want to like put in hours and then not have the natural raw talent to like really perform as a streamer anyway. So it's just worth noting that like even people who have made a living off of this don't necessarily recommend it for everyone.
Yeah.
No, I agree. But I think, do you think that that's like it's significantly different than from like soccer players? Because there are a lot of like youth soccer players, especially in Europe, who by the age of 6 are put into an academy,
Right.
and they go through for years and put in crazy commitment. And
Right. I just say that there's less risk if you don't make it to the top, as it were, playing soccer or football. You're gonna get fit along the way and be doing something that's good for your physical and mental health. But otherwise, if you don't make it on esports for video games, then you're just potentially like irritating your parents because you're spending hours playing video games every day, sort of rotting your eyes, and not making any money off of it, and spending a lot of time staring at computer screens. So it's sort of
Well, do you
there's a
guys
much
think
worse risk
video
reward.
games make you smarter? Because there are a lot of books and literature about how the risk factor of them, like the fact that you can take risks with little actual like consequence, makes people better at like
Interesting.
situational awareness and like life decisions, and it's a good opportunity for kids to get out and have kind of a sandbox to mess around in.
I think that's
isn't there
fair.
also a danger?
Yeah,
For this very same reason.
Well, what did you say?
Harold,
I,
go.
I, I think that, isn't there also a danger for the very same reason?
Yeah, I
Like
suppose this is, yeah.
because there are fewer restrictions, it's harder to learn, especially really young children who are more and more these days playing video games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I do think that there is a danger in being able. I mean, it's probably the internet more generally than
Yeah.
just video games, but um, I do think that there's a danger in being in an environment where there are fewer restrictions, and maybe I don't mean necessarily parental restrictions, but more like social restrictions and like social conventions, and you can't read body language or facial expressions, and I think that there's a few biases, psychological reasons why it's easier to interact with people over the internet, which is and sort of what we're getting at is a blessing and a curse, and that you know for some people it can be very beneficial and that you learn how to interact with others, but I also think that it can sometimes be detrimental.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. I think to say there's benefits to video games is like I think there might be some benefits to whatever you do. If you're doing any activity is going to have some perks, but then the other challenge is that like sorry, I'm trying to focus here. Oh boy. There's also certain like disadvantages, and as Harold pointed out, like the thing that one might claim makes video games help you in some way might also be a disadvantage at the same time. And just like to say video games might make you smarter or do such and such, like the real thing for me is like, okay, that's fair, you might gain something from playing video games rather than just like having fun. But then they're also like, what else might you be doing with your time if you weren't playing Xbox in that moment? Like you're probably gaining more from like if you were reading a book, or if you were just, even if you're doing nothing, there's it's important to have downtime which allows your brain to process things and allows you to develop as an individual. So even if you're like incredibly bored not doing any activity, that's still beneficial for you. So I wouldn't say that. I would still assert that like I think there's this big risk reward factor of like if you don't make it to esports, it's not great that you've been spending that much time playing video games with like no payoff.
Yeah. So here we go. Let's move on to a secondary topic that's kind of more relevant to the game we're playing right now. So a lot of these battle royale games are free to play, which for game developers, well, for people who are kind of, don't know a lot about how game developers work, are like, well, that's a great deal for me. That's awesome. It's a free game. But where all these games rely on is kind of like cosmetic expenses, like things like battle passes or skins, where people actually spend real money for in-game currency. And that's where the game actually makes its money back. And I was wondering what you guys think of that kind of method of making profit off games, because how a lot of people describe it, if you read about it, is this idea that all the supplemental cost of the game is made up by this 1% of players that actually spends money on cosmetics, because let's say 99% of people actually don't, and they just play it for what it is, and that's a free game. But that kind of like imbalanced in profitability, like would you rather pay for a battle royale game once and like have all the skins and all that, and not have this idea of like always feeling like you need to spend money to be incorporated into the community and have the coolest looking stuff?
Well, I definitely disagree that that players feel like they have to spend money to be
But there's
incorporated
a
into
want.
the
There's a
gaming
want.
community.
There's like a want.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that like the game we're playing now, Apex Legends, has a pretty good system in that a lot of the skins and the extra add-ons that don't improve your gameplay but make you look cooler. A lot of those things are attainable without paying any money.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it's a lot
Takes a
easier
while.
if you do pay money, and it takes
Right.
a lot longer, and you have to put in more time and effort. I think I think it definitely makes sense from the like game developers perspective, because they sorry, a bit focused here. Because because there's like the sunk cost. Another psychology thing is like if you've put in so much time into playing a video game and you've leveled up, you think, oh, it doesn't hurt to spend $5 on a skin that makes me look cooler,
Yeah.
So
Right.
and it makes sense from a sort of economic standpoint that they do that, and as a player of this game specifically, I don't really have a problem with that because maybe I'm being duped into at some point later down the road spending money. But right now, I really do feel the freedom to play the game and have access to all of the add-ons, even though it might take me a little longer and I might have to work a little harder to get them.
Yeah. I think I need to focus right here, but
No, we're gonna be fine. Don't worry. This is just a minor thing for us, you know. But no, I think it's good too, and it also creates the more players you have, the
oh, I
better
took it out.
lobbies function. So, like, just playing this game, I've noticed that we load in really quickly, which is kind of like a really convenient thing, and it makes it easier just to hop to round to round.
Knocked
And
one.
if you have a free game, you're gonna have way more like viable, you know, players to load into your lobbies, and lobbies will load faster, which is awesome for everyone who's playing it. So I think that's a good thing. Sorry, we are in a bit of a fight here, audience, but we're doing
Quite
pretty well.
actually.
Yeah, I took out 3 people.
Cool. All right, but yes,
Almost.
free game, good aesthetic things. If you want them, you can have them. I think that's the takeaway there. So, how are you guys feeling about the actual game itself, Apex, right now? I'm having a good time. It's pretty
I'm
fun.
having a great time.
Yeah,
It's very
it's a lot
stressful,
of fun.
but
Just so our
It is
audience knows,
stressful.
we're finally in the top 10. There used to be 20 groups of 3. Now there are 10 groups of 3. So we're doing all right. All right. All
Yeah.
right.
I'm doing okay.
I
For
also think that there is something so like easily obsessive about the idea of a battle royale game. Like, you know, you put 20 groups of 3 into a game and last one standing wins. Like, there is something really human to want to win something like that.
well,
Like, to be
the big thing is if you make it to the top, you're like, oh, I was so close. Let me go again. You know.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's addictive for sure. I mean,
And it's there's because you're really it's sort of like a food that has no point of satiety sort of thing, as your goal. It's like for what they're trying to develop. It means that like, oh well, we got to move. It
sorry. Yeah.
it means that it's not like you're like just trying to fight off zombies and it's like, oh well, I was close to like defeating all the zombies. It's like I don't know, the design of it makes it more addictive, which is obviously a massive marketing strategy.
Yeah.
So what about how do you guys feel about the fact that you can play with random strangers online? You can play with your friends, but it's it's just as easy to play with other people, and like the you can opt into a game mic, so you can talk to
Right.
random strangers online, which can lead to some pretty
Interesting.
not interesting, I
It
suppose.
could be unfun if they're unkind.
Yeah. You know, I've been playing video games for a lot of my life because I have a brother I have 2 brothers that were always into video games, and I always get mic shy, even though I grew up with it. So I think it really depends on the person. Like, I hate turning on my end game and like talking to my squad. And that's another reason why Apex has done so well is they've developed a system that they call pinging. That basically removes the need for you to talk over mic to actually have like a competitive advantage. And
Yeah,
I think that's
sorry.
why it's so appealing, excuse me, to some players because you have to be less social, which is really interesting to think about, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
means you can communicate still.
yeah, and that actually just reminded me that like a lot of these games. I mean, we were talking about this recently about the fact that they have, all these battle royale games are essentially like you battle other squads until you win, and so what's new about that? What's novel, and why do players keep coming back? And what they do is they keep adding these updates and and new things, and they change the map and different weapons and different skins and characters and so on. And so it's kind of crazy how much more you can get out of a game by just manipulating that kind of that stuff.
Yeah, kind of like the facets of it and not the actual thing.
Yeah. But I have to say, I'm completely like drawn in by it. I mean, I'm always anticipating, the next update or the next, the next thing to be released. So,
Right.
Yeah. And like just to like actually demonstrate how good this ping system is, which we're trying out. Like, we're doing a podcast right now, and we've said some things over this ping communication system, and we've won 3 fights, so it really is effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it.
So the fact that these these game developers can be so on top of what makes like a fun game to play,
Mhm.
tweaking it constantly. I think that, I mean, that's definitely not something that you have in other sports. I mean, the the rules of soccer are updated like ever so slightly every season, but
Right.
Mhm.
um,
It's not like you can revamp a sport every season. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think that that's something incredible that another thing that's incredible that video games can provide.
Backtracking a little, since we were talking about the effectiveness for the for making a free game versus making a buy to own game,
Mhm.
and how much companies make off of that. Now, what our preferences as a consumer is, I was going to say, are you guys familiar with the YouTuber The Odd Ones Out, who does comedic videos? He well, anyway, so he at one point in one of his videos sort of ranted about how he was like, he thinks the biggest scams are mobile games, because nearly any mobile game you play, the majority of them are free, which makes it, because very few people, unless it's like very popular or it seems very enticing, very few people are going to pay $1 or $2 for a mobile game. They're going to want to get the free ones. But then they have in-app purchases, which allow you to, you know, not have ads or buy more cosmetic skins,
Yeah.
sort of things, or something. And he said he thinks they're the biggest scam because it's kids who are playing these games, and
Yeah.
they
No.
have no
Yeah.
sense. They have no sense of control. They don't know. They don't have this sense of like, this is my parents' money I'm spending. Especially if there's a credit card hooked to it, you can just, with a click of a button, they've spent like however much money or whatever. And so there's no sense of consequence, and it's yeah. So it's just very easy to unknowingly suck up their parents' money. And yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
basically
No. No. No.
it.
I agree.
So
And I think that
it's just interesting that
yeah,
way.
I think that games like this kind of like conspiracy theory esque, but I do feel like games anticipate that like spending in these like $2 formats is more inclined to kids. Like they're like, oh,
Yeah.
just $2 is a candy bar. I can
I
spend
mean,
it.
it's not just
Yeah.
kids. I think we're
Yeah,
running into
anyone likes the idea of
Yeah.
spending like this
yeah,
small factor of money, but then $2 becomes $10 and $10 becomes $20 and so
exactly,
on.
exactly.
Right.
And
So
yeah.
continue, Harold.
No, well, I want to go back to what we were talking about, this sort of in-game pinging system, and
Mhm.
communicating with other people online, and so I've had some really fun experiences actually, like talking to people online, and it's really something that you don't have to opt into, and there's a little bit of a danger, especially for young impressionable kids who aren't used to the system, I suppose, but and so I think that, I suppose, playing a little bit of a devil's advocate, do you think that, we've been talking a lot about like very young children and their, how their kids the kids who play video games are getting younger and younger.
Especially
Or
with Fortnite.
the age to play video games is
Yeah.
getting younger and younger. I suppose I should phrase it like that. That if that's how they learn to communicate with one another,
Huh, interesting.
is that problematic? And I think I have my own answer to that, but I would love to hear what you guys think about that.
You know, I'm kind of particular about like kids playing video games. My parents weren't really strict about it, but my brothers actually were. I think that Nintendo, if we're going to be slightly tangential, really excels at making video games for like youth. In the fact that like if you hop into Mario or Kirby or whatever you want to call it, it's a single player game. It's not super violent. It's kind of fluffy and light and easily consumable, and
Right.
it's still that place where you can take risks and do experimental things, and it's like a nice break where you see like creative worlds that you can kind of sandbox in again. I think the idea of kids playing like Fortnite and Call of Duty, like highly competitive violent games, I don't really support that until like you're a little bit more mature and it can be less of like this all consuming thing,
Mhm.
because kids, oh, that was a weird animation we just saw in the game. But for kids this can be like more real than it is for us. Like we can see this as just like a silly game, but I
Right.
think kids take it with more weight.
Mhm.
just because,
I
you know, it's easier for a kid to use their imagination.
What did you mean about your brothers were strict? Did they not let you play more adult games until
No.
mature?
My brothers weren't strict.
Oh.
They weren't strict about playing games. They were like, I could watch them play like Halo and stuff like that. But they were like, if you're gonna play something, just play Mario. Like you're not
Yeah.
old enough to take this for what it is.
Right.
And it
And
was
you might not-
fascinating. I loved watching my brothers play video games. It was one of my favorite pastimes.
Right.
But so I mean, Matthew, do you have an answer to my
No,
question?
I think I did, but I can't remember. So you go ahead.
Okay. Well, so the one thing that I was going to say is that I think that something that we don't really have any control over and what we haven't really talked about yet is video game slang and video game like vernacular.
Wait, minor break because I can't articulate this through the game. We are going to jump through this portal here we're going to jump through this portal here. All right. So continue, Harold.
There he goes.
I accidentally jumped through the portal. I didn't mean to.
Of course. Do we want to go to the back end? Let's go to the back end
We're
here.
going right here. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. So how is everyone?
Just back to what I was saying a second ago.
This is a supply crate.
Back to the conversation.
Yeah. So we don't really have any control over how, any language really develops, but specifically, how video game language slang develops, and I think, for better or worse, it's sort of becoming the language of, our generation and probably future generations. Is what is spoken over the internet and what is, and as a part of what the internet, video games, what is spoken over video games. So I think that to answer my own question about is it bad that kids are interacting online based sometimes exclusively, I mean, yes and no. So like I think that nothing will beat meeting a couple kids in the park to play soccer and sort of learning socially that way. But I also think that it's kind of unavoidable that kids at some point are going to learn online slang and video game culture, I suppose, because it's their culture. So and I think that, and I actually think that that's a really healthy thing. So
sorry guys, so we are in the last three. It's a big fight for us right now. Harold and Matthew, how are you guys feeling right now? I'm a little stressed. I'm not even going
I'm
cap.
a little stressed as well. I'm going to get on this house with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless we're a little
apologize
exposed to
for our
the
listeners
third
who,
squad.
Yeah.
can't
How do you feel about this?
Sounds like someone's
I
reviving.
feel like this is a big deal, And that's what I
Yeah.
think is really fun about these Royale games. Like, I think that it feels super realistic. Like it's heavy. Like this is for it. This is for all the marbles.
I mean, I don't know if any studies have been done so far about the influence of the stress.
Should we preposition in the next ring? Sorry to interrupt.
Let's there are people on that roof, but we got to continue this conversation because I'm having a good time. So, I think this is a good place to have stress, if any, because
I knocked someone.
we feel stress in the
definitely a stress
moment,
reliever.
but it is also a stress reliever, but it's like also like not real stress. It's kind of just a fun rush.
Yeah, and it's over in moments, and
I hope it's not over in moments.
well, I mean, even if we win, it's 20 minutes maximum. So
Yeah.
So
it's also interesting how games like this, how they manage time. Like for people who don't really know Battle Royale games, they have this thing called the ring, which slowly pushes in on the map and makes the like fight area smaller. And that's how, time is managed. And that's how you keep everything short within like that 20-minute block, which is just so interesting because it's not always skill oriented. A lot of it can be luck.
mm-hmm.
This is stressful.
This is intense.
All right, there's the ring. Push in, my friends. All right, guys, if we win this for you, it goes out to the free soda audience.
One more?
There's one other squad left.
Found.
I knocked one of them.
Oh, boy.
They're all in this house, I think, but I could very much be wrong.
Yep, I see one.
Oh, Well,
got
Well,
him.
we just won, guys.
we won
So
the championship.
free
That's
soda.
great.
That win goes out for you. We'll take a picture. We'll post it on the gram when we release this episode. It was great. That was a good time.
We're Nationals at this game.
Yeah, I know. It's like we've been playing it since quarantine. It's crazy.
Well, fantastic. That was quite exciting, and
Oh,
I
good
would just
game,
like to
Samuel.
say that Samuel did way better than the other of us did.
Double
Myself
my damage.
specifically.
You know, but it's
Uh,
all about. I think a
Harry
lot
did
of this game is just about friendship. You know, because I know we really wanted to get to other games and other types of games, and we're gonna move on past esports and Royale for this episode because there's more to video games than just esport games. So, do we have any final notes before we move on from esports? Because I know part 2 of this episode of Chicken Shack, I think it is called, will be on games like Minecraft and more creative, less gun oriented games. Do we have any final esports commentary
for this half of the
for this
episode.
half of the episode?
Um, well, I think the real thing is that it's just so new, and we won't really know that it's still building its legacy, its foundation, and so I think we'll be having a very different conversation in 5-10 years from now. So it'll
Yeah,
be fun to see how it develops.
Matthew.
Yeah, I'd say same thing as what Ninja said.
What
I
did
don't even
Ninja say?
that like if you really think you can do it, I guess go for it. But otherwise, I personally wouldn't advise most people taking up esports as their aspired profession.
But just I
Sorry,
feel
I
like
was just
also
reminded.
just like playing like club soccer in college or just recreational activity. I think that if you want to pursue it and get pretty good at it, maybe become a Twitch streamer, but like not invest your entire career into it, go for it. Follow your dreams, do what you love,
Mhm.
because it's a platform that's raw and ready for the taking for our up and coming generation.
I agree. And sorry, I was just reminded of a choir teacher who told me once that he was speaking to the whole choir of choral students, and he was like, if choral singing is a profession you really want to go into, then go for it. But
Yeah.
only if you like really, 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 really want to go for it,
hmm
because it's tough. So
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing here.
Well, you know what? Thank you everybody for listening to Free Soda. That win goes out to you. It was a great time. We're gonna see you on part 2. Thanks for listening, guys.